there's this need, like I could hear people say, I need to get back on stage, because there's this fear I think we have as artists that we're only as good as our last show, right?
Oh yeah.
Or we're going to forget what it means to be that. But in some way, I've kind of let go of that, because I think what used to happen towards 2019, 2020 is like a bad joke or a joke not landing or another comedian's joke being funnier. Ref- Another person's joke being funnier would automatically in my head translate to you're not funny, or a
Yes.
joke going bad in my head would be like, oh, you're a bad person. And that's, as you said, it hurts, right? It's not a healthy way to live, because then every day you're so kind of fragile, and every show kind of is make or break for you as a person, and not just
Yeah.
as a career but as an actual functioning human being, and that takes a toll.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that distinction is it takes time, but it, I think, is
Yeah,
essential when
I
you're in
think
this
everyone
space.
figures it out at their own sort of pace. Like,
Mm,
particularly for me, I think I reached a point a year and a half ago where I was actively telling people that, I'm done with stand-up comedy. I don't want to do this thing anymore. And um, I think for me, it was, I would keep giving myself reasons that, oh, I can't talk about the things I want to do because there's censorship from
mm,
everywhere, and I can't do this thing because I want to do long form comedy and I want to do 1 hour specials, but now everyone wants to put out 90-second videos and go viral from that. But I think eventually, and I sort of realized and processed this, was I think that me sort of telling myself and others that I want to quit doing stand up comedy was sort of, in a way, just rationalizing in my head, just not being able to deal with the fact that what I was doing was just different. So in the sense that I was trying to tell myself that I don't like this, whereas in actual fact I love stand-up comedy, but it was just that it had just become a little different, a little bit more difficult. And I think my mind and my body was resisting that change, and I think we all at some point have to keep evolving.
that
And
fear,
I
right?
think,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Now, that was that fear for you, that you've come out of the lockdown a different person, and as a result a different comedian, or was that fear that you're not going to be as good as what you were pre-lockdown?
I don't think I ever had fear in terms of myself
Mm-hmm.
being good enough or not good enough. I think I have always been confident enough in my ability to get on stage and do a job. But
Right.
I felt fearful of, have I done enough in
Mm.
this lockdown? Did I waste this time by sitting and, I spent a lot of my lockdown just doing a lot of things that I had the luxury to do because I was like, okay, I have a little bit of savings, so I can afford to sort of sit for a few months and just be like, okay, you know what, there's no work, that's fine.
Right.
Obviously first few months of that was terrible, where I was like, oh my god, there's no work, there's no work, there's no work.
Yeah.
And then you reach an acceptance of, okay, this is why you have savings, like this
Yeah.
is for exactly these reasons. But after a point I was just like, this is sorry, I just lost my train of thought. Can you
Right.
catch
No,
where I
no,
was?
I think that's absolutely terrifying, right? We were talking about this idea that suddenly, you know what,
Yeah. Hmm.
um, I'm off my rhythm, right? I'm not hitting the road running. All these things. The social conditioning is so strong. Like when
Hmm.
I'm doing this, I haven't gotten onto a public stage in a while now, and there's that suddenly you wake up going, shit, am I letting down my creative potential? Am I not doing
Hmm.
what I should be doing? Should I be on stage hitting it? And then I'm like, you know
Yeah.
what? Um, this is in fact more beneficial right now, these conversations I'm having on the podcast, doing these things. It's because, I mean, my inputs for my material is by living a life and not just chasing after every joke. And I
Yeah.
feel what you just said about taking time to do what you enjoy not just gives you a sense of satisfaction and fulfillment in living a life every day,
Yeah.
but without you knowing it, it's also feeding that engine that eventually puts out the jokes, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I think I sort of was getting back to the point that I was actually making. So I was
Yeah.
doing a lot of these things, and I think coming out of the lockdown, my only thing was, did I not do enough in terms of the alternative things that everyone else was doing, the
Hmm.
hustle, for lack of a better word, of
Yeah.
sitting, and there were so many people who were like sitting and just like live streaming every day and sitting and creating like these entire streaming their video games and playing and make actively collaborating with other artists. And like we saw people like Samay who did so much with chess. We saw
Right.
Tanmay who started his own entire streaming situation. We saw so many people. I mean, I started a football show with Neville and Kautuk. So,
Hmm.
but I was like, was that enough? Like this small football show, I could have done so. Like there's always the thing
Yeah.
of I could have done so much more to get more followers, more numbers, because eventually it's all, over the last few years especially, it all became a numbers game,
Yeah.
rather than the game of skill or comedy or art. It really eventually boiled down to every brand manager, every artist manager, every agent was like, what are your numbers? Do you have the followers? Do you have the subscribers?
Yeah.
If not, then it was almost drilled into your head that you're nobody, and I can't sell you with your 50,000 subscribers. You need to have 1 lakh subscribers for
Yeah.
me to even start thinking about selling you. Like these are conversations that we've had, and those really were the doubts and regrets that I've had of, uh, because I've realized that the work we do, the stand-up comedy, and as you alluded to as well, the actual stand-up comedy, the fun part of it is a very small amount of doing the shows, the corporate gig or the public gig, or the performance is a very small aspect, especially these days, and in this industry, maybe more specifically to India, because now every comedian is required to be a content creator, an influencer, a streamer, writer, everything. Like you, a brand consultant. Like this is what the agencies will expect of you. That okay, you need to be good at everything so that we can make you money. And I think after a point, you have to be like, do I want to be all those things? I mean,
Hmm.
it's perfectly fine to just pick one thing, be good at that, and stick with it. And yes, you may not make crazy amounts of money, or you may not make money immediately off it, but I think it's about defining what is good enough, and just enough for
Yeah.
yourself, and then you can go from there.
Do you feel? I think that's really well said because the thing is that it's like it's really otherwise impossible to keep um, your balance, right? Because there's always a new platform coming out. There's always a new platform which is getting people noticed. Like, remember the early days, everyone's like, are you on Twitter? Oh, you should be on Twitter. Then you
Yeah.
should write a funny tweet about the newest topic that's released, or, land the first
Yeah.
punch. And then it's like, oh, Instagram. And then it became Instagram memes, and then Reels, and then it became Facebook pages. So it's never
Yeah,
ending,
it
right?
became
Because all.
Threads yesterday, which is the new Twitter. So
Exactly.
full
And
circle.
it's full circle, absolutely. And the thing is, do you find, because you have been, over the past few years, gaming, you've collaborated with Neville for the podcast, you've collaborated with your wife for the other one you're doing on
Hmm.
Audible, you do stand up still. So um, I'm keen to know, how do you identify what medium works for you? I mean, is it trial and error, or is there something that you're drawn to more? Because you are quite a prolific writer, if I'm not mistaken. Like you've done writing in the past, writing projects, you've
Yeah.
written for other shows. So, what um, kind of process do you use to select which medium that you're going to express
Hmm.
that particular, um, whether it's a football podcast or a travel show for television or OTTs,
Right.
or if it's a blog? So how do you kind of go through that process of selection?
I think earlier it was a case of just sort of going where the money was.
Mm-hmm.
That okay, somebody needs you to write a script. Okay, now suddenly you're a writer this month,
Mm-hmm.
or if somebody wants you to create a brand video or a sketch, and that is when we were running East India Comedy as a sort of a content creation company or a digital solutions company, beyond a point.
Mm-hmm.
And that was then. I mean, I looked at it sort of as a business. Now, as a more independent artist, it's a bit easier to make that choice because there's no real pressure to it, especially if it's my own project. I have the luxury to experiment. So with 442, the football show that I do with Neville, and then Kautuk, we added as the third host of the show.
Right.
It started initially as just a podcast that we thought would be only audio. Then we tried it on the EIC YouTube channel. Then I was like, okay, I'm going to try putting the entire episode on Instagram and see how that goes. Then I put it on my YouTube channel. Then we decided, okay, no, this thing needs its own YouTube channel. So when it's your own thing, you have that luxury of like experimentation and seeing where it goes. And I think we were lucky to have like a fantastic community that we've built through that podcast. That's
Right.
very enthusiastic, and we built our own sort of over the years. We've built a voice for that podcast, which is which is nice. But for other things, I think I've accepted. I don't think I've ever chosen actively to do things on Instagram or social media. I have accepted that I have to,
Right.
which is a thing that I was very averse to earlier. I was like, no, I'm not going to do this Reels content and this 90-second, it's all nonsense. And they're just people dancing on the internet. And I don't want to start dancing. And I was just realized, I mean, I don't have to dance. I can just do 90-second bits of stand-up comedy.
Right, there have
And
been
I
moments
started.
where I just basically am going through this jokes, there's a dance, there's this RRR thing. Suddenly this mic clip pops up and I'm like, who's this boring bastard? Dude? Like, it feels like you really have to keep the energy high, but like normal conversation just seems like it's not going to get anyone's attention. And it doesn't when it's so fast, right?
Yeah, it's so fast. It's so immemorable, the
Yeah.
content right now, because you just like. In fact, this was just happening like an hour ago. I was sitting with Sana and again scrolling through my phone, and I found this cat video that popped up,
Yeah.
and I wanted to show it to her. And while I was just showing it to her, my finger while showing it on the phone just flicked past the thing, and it went into the back button. And now that video is just lost forever. I mean, there's no way of finding that video. And I mean, that's just how fleeting it is. Like
Yeah.
you have it one moment, and the next is just gone. It's forgotten, and you're getting the next sort of hit of dopamine or whatever it is that you're trying to get, stimulation or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's I mean, I have a very love-hate relationship with social media. Mostly hate, very little love.
Right.
But yeah.
No, because it's, do you feel like I've invested so much by putting together these thoughts in the form of a joke and telling those jokes when, and then suddenly, as you said, it's something which is inconsequential in a way, kind of overrides the thing, or or do you feel like now what's the point of putting it on reels, because it's really not even that something that a person takes time to appreciate, but it's just like another flick, another screen up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I honestly, as I said, I have learned to accept it, and I have accepted that reels are, I treat it as advertisements.
Right.
The same way that you would find 10 advertisements in the middle of watching your TV show to tell you about new products. I look at every reel that I put out as an advertisement to get people to come to my show.
Yeah.
And that's really how I look at it. I'm not looking at putting out, like a lot of people will do the reels of just like very average material, but just put out really consistently so that they keep, because the algorithm rewards, I think, two things really. It rewards quality and it rewards consistency. So if you don't have quality, you can get the same output really through being consistent with average material.
Yeah.
And a lot of people do that, and that's fine. If that's the path you want to choose, eventually it's about what your end goal is, right? If your end goal is numbers, which then will translate to potentially more brand work or making money that way, that's the approach to take. For me, I focus on quality. I will put out maybe a few videos every year, maybe 5 or 6 videos, and then I will cut all of that down into 90-second bits and put that on Instagram. And if they work well, which invariably they do, because I tend to like put out good content over there, so that will generally get shared on Instagram, on YouTube. People might start sharing it on WhatsApp, and that's sort of where it converts to real people coming to my shows. And that's for me the aim of social media. It's an advertisement for my core skill set. So I have a touring show that I have the 1 hour, and I just tour that show, and I write a bunch of new stuff which is mainly for social media, that's exclusively for that, which I then use to market the main show. So
So you do it in
for me,
those
it's very clear.
shows. Right. Right.
Yeah.
So you can chop that up and take it away from
Yeah.
Okay, nice. That's a nice approach.